What would you do if your husband left for a leadership retreat and came back with his assistant and her parents on your company's dime? When Daniel walked through those airport doors 2 weeks later, smiling like a man who had just expanded his empire, he had no idea the empire no longer belonged to him. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Elena Martinez. I'm 38 years old, co-founder and CFO of a mid-sized marketing consulting firm we built from scratch 8 years ago. My husband, Daniel Martinez, 41, was the CEO. The visionary. The keynote speaker. The LinkedIn philosopher who posted about transparency and integrity every Monday morning at exactly 7 a.m. I was the one who read the contracts. From the outside, we were that power couple. Two ambitious entrepreneurs scaling a company past 7 figures. Inside? Things had shifted. Subtly at first. Late nights at the office. Locked screens when I walked by. A new assistant, Sophie Lynn, 26, who laughed a little too long at his jokes and started attending meetings that didn't require an assistant. Then came the announcement. Executive Leadership Retreat, Daniel said casually over dinner. 2 weeks in Vancouver. Very exclusive. Confidential. Confidential. Expensive, too. The charge hit our corporate account 3 days later. $48,000 labeled as Executive Development Intensive. Does that number sound normal to you? I didn't question him immediately. That's the thing about betrayal, it rarely starts with fireworks. It starts with small discomforts you push aside. Then I saw the photo. Not from Daniel. From Linda Lynn, Sophie's mother, 55 years old, posted publicly on Instagram. The caption read, "So proud of Sophie and her mentor Daniel. Family time in Whistler." Family time. Behind them? Snow-capped mountains. A luxury ski resort. Champagne glasses. No conference badges. No seminar rooms. And suddenly, the math wasn't just financial. 4 first-class tickets. Resort suite. Spa charges. This wasn't a retreat. This was a vacation. With his assistant. And her parents. And what Daniel didn't realize, what he conveniently forgot, was that I owned 51% of the company. He thought he was coming home to a conversation. Instead, he was coming home to something much colder. But before I locked the doors, I needed proof. And what I uncovered next made the betrayal look small. The first lie wasn't the trip. It was the budget. When you run the finances of a company, numbers speak louder than apologies. And Daniel had left a trail so loud it practically echoed. 4 first-class tickets to Vancouver. Not 2. 4. 1 presidential suite overlooking Whistler Mountain. 1 adjoining double room. A welcome package that included vintage champagne. And a spa reservation for 2 people, not 4. Tell me something. What kind of executive mastermind includes couples massages? I didn't call him. Not yet. Instead, I did what I always do when something feels off. I audited. The total charges over 14 days came to $67,482.18. Dining expenses averaged $900 per night. There were wine tastings. Private ski instructors. A helicopter tour labeled as transport logistics. Transport to where? Enlightenment? Daniel had told me the retreat was confidential. Phones discouraged. Networking behind closed doors. But Daniel lives online. He documents everything. Panels. Airport lounges. Even mediocre cappuccinos. 2 weeks. Silence. That's when I called the resort. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply said I was confirming corporate billing details. The receptionist was polite. Helpful. Unaware she was detonating my marriage with every sentence. Yes, Ms. Martinez. The Martinezland party checked in together. The Martinezland party. Together. And yes, the champagne was requested by Mr. Martinez for arrival. It was quite romantic. Romantic. I thanked her calmly. Hung up slowly. But here's where it shifted from affair to strategy. I searched public records. Victor Lin, 58, Sophie's father, had recently dissolved his import-export business after 22 years. Linda Lin had posted about exciting international opportunities just weeks before the trip. International. Daniel had mentioned expanding into Asia 3 months ago. He'd floated the idea of a strategic family partnership model at dinner once, vague, half-formed. I hadn't taken it seriously. Now I was. This wasn't just infidelity. This looked like positioning. Integration. Grooming investors who just happened to be his assistant's parents. Using my company's capital. Would you confront him right then? Would you send the screenshot? Or would you wait? I waited. Because Daniel thought he was building something behind my back. What he didn't realize was that legally, he had just handed me the one thing I needed to dismantle everything he thought he controlled. And while he was sipping wine at 6,000 feet, I was about to make a phone call that would change the trajectory of both our lives. But what happened in that boardroom 3 days later? That's when the real shift began. By the time Daniel was toasting new beginnings in Whistler, I was sitting across from a corporate attorney. Let me ask you something. If you discovered your business partner, who also happens to be your husband, misused nearly $70,000 in company funds, would you scream? Or would you strategize? I chose strategy. Our company, Martinez and Company Consulting, wasn't some casual joint venture. It was a registered LLC. I owned 51%. Daniel owned 49%. That detail mattered now more than ever. Buried inside our operating agreement was a clause most founders skim over. Breach of fiduciary duty through misuse of corporate funds grants majority shareholder authority to suspend executive powers pending investigation. He signed that document 8 years ago. The irony? He insisted we include that clause. Within 48 hours, I requested a formal forensic audit. Clean. Quiet. Clinical. Then I called an emergency advisory board meeting. 3 members. All seasoned professionals. All aware that while Daniel was the face of the company, I was the spine. I presented the evidence in bullet points. 4 first-class tickets. Luxury suite. Spa services. Personal excursions billed as corporate expenses. Total, $67,482.18. Silence filled the room when I finished. One board member, Richard Hale, 62, leaned back and asked the only question that mattered: is there proof this was business-related? No. There wasn't. The vote to suspend Daniel's executive authority pending investigation was unanimous. And here's where it gets interesting. I didn't fire him. I froze executive access to company accounts. I revoked his financial authorization. I instructed IT to temporarily disable his internal systems login. Then I changed the office locks. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just administratively. Top 5 clients received a composed email: leadership restructuring underway. Service continuity guaranteed. No gossip. No scandal. Just confidence. Meanwhile, Sophie posted another photo. Celebrating bold futures, she captioned it. Daniel commented with a heart emoji. A heart. While his corporate card was frozen. Would you have texted him right then? Sent a screenshot? Started the war early? I didn't. Instead, I did something he would never anticipate. I wired a deposit on a small office space in Lisbon. A city I've quietly researched for months. Lower operating costs. Growing tech market. clean tax structure. I began transferring our intellectual property into a holding entity under my controlling shares. And when Daniel texted from Vancouver International Airport, "Can't wait to see you, Red Heart." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I locked my phone. Because he thought he was flying home to fix a misunderstanding. What he didn't know was that by Monday morning, the key to his own office wouldn't even turn. And the look on his face? That was only the beginning. The look on his face when the key didn't turn? I'll never forget it. Monday morning. 8:47 a.m. Daniel always arrived early after a trip, dramatic entrance, coffee in hand, ready to tell stories. I wasn't there. But building security called me within minutes. "Ms. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, access code isn't working." I told them calmly, "Yes. That's correct." Can you imagine standing outside a company you helped build, and hearing the door refuse you? Daniel called me immediately. Once. Twice. 5 times. I answered on the 6th. "Elena, what's going on? My key isn't working." "Oh," I said evenly. "You're back?" Silence. Confusion creeping in. "The office is closed for internal review," I continued. "You'll receive formal documentation shortly." "Internal review? What are you talking about?" So I began listing them. Slowly. 4 first-class tickets. Whistler Presidential Suite. Champagne on arrival. Spa package for 2. There was a pause after that one. "Elena, this isn't what you think. Isn't it?" I mentioned the helicopter tour. The $900 dinners. The adjoining room registered under Sophie Lynn and her parents, Victor, 58. Linda, 55. His breathing changed. Faster. "It was networking," he said finally. "Her father has connections." "Connections to what?" I asked. "Bankruptcy court?" That landed. You see, I had done more digging. Victor Lynn's dissolved import business wasn't strategic expansion. It was financial collapse. Multiple unpaid supplier disputes. Public record. Daniel didn't respond to that. Instead, he switched tactics. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" That's when I told him about the board vote. The audit. The temporary suspension of his executive authority. "You can't do that." "I can," I said. "I own 51%. That was the first time he sounded afraid. And then, as if the situation couldn't become more surreal, my phone rang again later that afternoon. Victor Lynn. Calm voice. Controlled. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "No," I replied. "This is accounting." By Friday, the advisory board met again. The forensic audit confirmed personal misuse of funds. No signed client meetings. No contracts initiated. No revenue tied to the trip. The vote to remove Daniel as CEO was unanimous. But here's what he still didn't understand. While he was fighting to keep his title, I had already made a move he couldn't reverse. And when he came home that evening, furious and ready to argue. The house was empty when Daniel pulled into the driveway that Friday night, ready to fight for his position, ready to demand explanations, ready to blame me for everything. The lights were off. The living room echoed. The artwork was gone. The dining table, gone. Even the espresso machine he loved was gone. Because while he was arguing with board members and calling attorneys, I had packed. Not recklessly. Not emotionally. Legally. Joint accounts had already been separated under council supervision. My personal assets were transferred. The house was listed. Documents were signed electronically from 4,000 miles away. Yes. By the time he walked into that empty house, I was in Lisbon. Let me bring you back to the beginning. What would you do if your husband left for a leadership retreat and came back with his assistant and her parents on your company's dime? Would you scream? Cry? Beg? Or would you change the locks? The board finalized Daniel's removal the following Monday. The misconduct clause reduced his buyout valuation significantly. He walked away with less than half of what he once believed he controlled. Martinez and Company. Consulting no longer existed under that name. I restructured. Rebranded. Relaunched overseas with the same core clients who chose stability over scandal. Revenue dipped for 1 quarter. Then it grew. As for Sophie? Her LinkedIn updated 3 weeks later, open to new opportunities. Victor Lin's dissolved business remains inactive. Daniel released a public statement citing creative differences and personal realignment. Creative differences. That's one way to describe it. Here's the truth no one posts about online. Betrayal isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's itemized. Line by line. Receipt by receipt. And consequences? They don't always explode. Sometimes they close quietly, with a lock clicking into place. So I'll ask you one last time. If you were in my position, would you have confronted him the moment you saw that Instagram post? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Comment locked if you think strategy beats emotion. And subscribe, because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's logistical. He thought he went away to build a future with someone else. He just didn't realize I was already building mine.